putting it in the comments. Without further ado, I would do you a disservice by introducing you. So I'm going to let you do that, Greg. Welcome. You have the mic.
All right, Eli. Thank you so much. And man, there's mutual respect. I've watched you launch and just take off. I love your passion. I love your drive. I love your professionalism, and it speaks to today's conversation. I remember, man, this was years ago. I was doing a little presentation in your office for the whole office, and you had a question or concern, something about our service or something. And man, it was such mad respect because you came directly to me to say, "Hey, I've got this little issue," and that right there, I knew this is a man of integrity who confronts an issue head on, and that's the way to do business. So I want to thank everybody on the call today for spending your time. Your time is valuable, and I want to respect that. I'm going to leave time for Q&A, and I'm willing to hang on long if anybody wants to hang on long. I also want to recognize Meg Massengale. Meg is our growth director for Bryan & Bryan Inspections. I invited her to be on this call today. And so, Meg, thank you for carving out your time as well. Before we get started, I went through an exercise in another mastermind group I'm in, we were posed a question in 2023, what was your biggest win and your biggest lesson? And I'm going to share my biggest lesson because it will affect how you receive today's conversation. I broke a tooth about 6 months ago, and if you break a tooth, I have to have an implant, and where the tooth is located, they have to build up the bone, and they drill a pin into the bone, and then it's about a 6-month process. So here's my biggest lesson of 2023. On the day you go to the dentist for your final implant, and you pull into the dentist office, and before you go in the door, you get a call from them that says, "Oh, by the way, your permanent tooth was misformed, so you need to come back in about a month." The lesson is, don't throw away your temporary tooth before you get the permanent. Otherwise, you look like this. So I'm pointing this out to let you know that I'm not a professional boxer. It was a distraction. I'm not a pirate. If I pull a thing down over my eye, then I've gone into full pirate mode. So yes, there is a giant gap in my smile. So a quick background. I'm the founder and partner with my wife, Bryan & Bryan Inspections. Theresa Bryan is the other Bryan. We've operated for about 30 years. We're the largest home inspection company in Houston, and we also operate in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin, San Antonio. I partnered with another inspector in Aruba recently. That's just kind of a fun project. You really pushed my friend to do something big and bold, and I thought, well, I'll support him in this. We also own Green Team Pest, which is a pest control company located in Houston. We're about to launch in Orlando, Florida, and possibly Tampa, with our eyes set on Miami and North Carolina. My passion, which leads to today, is in 2017, we launched a coaching and mastermind group called Inspector Empire Builder. That was built specifically because I work in the world of small businesses, small home inspection businesses that just seem to really struggle in building a scalable business. That a scalable business creates opportunities for other people to build a bigger and better world for themselves. And systems, processes, those are really important, but the biggest gap that most organizations have is building an incredible culture that everything rests on the shoulders of the culture within your organization. And more importantly, leadership development, and building results-driven teams. And that's what today's conversation is about. Now, what we're going to be talking about, I did not create this. This is directly from a book I recommend you all read called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Now, in Bryan and Bryan Inspections, we actually have an ongoing leadership development program. We believe it's critically important to help people grow, not only professionally, but personally as well. You know, there's the image that you see of our life, you know, ourselves, our life, and we all want a bigger life. But in reality, the only way you can get to a bigger life is becoming a bigger you. And so I believe in creating an educational space ongoing for anybody who wants to participate in our organizations. That we pour tremendous resources into them, into their own personal and professional growth, because we are going to be limited in our ability to create opportunities by how much empowerment that we give to our people. We are a people-driven organization. It is not a top-down organization. We are very structured. We have a president, we have an operations manager, growth manager, services director, and all those necessary components, but is predicated on leadership and building a team. So I'm going to be using a PowerPoint today. Typically, I don't like to use a lot of a PowerPoint, but this conversation today, we typically take 4 weeks to go through this training. It's 4 2-hour sessions with our group, and we typically limit it to 20 people. We're launching it in this next Monday, and we'll probably have to cap it or add a second course for our employees. And so as we get started, if you have a pen and a paper, I want you to draw a giant pyramid or a giant triangle. Take up the whole paper with that triangle. And within your triangle, I want you to draw 4 horizontal lines, which will give you 5 spaces. Okay? So now I want you to think about any grouping that you're a part of that you may call a team. Now that group could be your family. It could be from your church or your synagogue or your house of faith, whatever that may be. It could be a community group that you're a part of. Or it could be your business team. So I want you to write down team and group. And what we're going to do is we go through this exercise, you will determine whether this group you're a part of is actually a team, or is it a group of people that believe that they are a team. And the expectation today is when we leave, you will understand the components that if there's any breakdown in getting results in your organization or your team, you will immediately begin to identify exactly where the breakdown has occurred. This is a foundational piece of everything we do in every business I'm involved with, this results triangle. Because when we're not getting results, our entire team knows this is where the breakdown is. And as we go through this exercise today, you're going to be able to identify it yourself. So I'm going to go to this PowerPoint, and excuse me, I am literally a pen and paper guy. Yeah, I'm that old dude. So we will muscle through together this PowerPoint. And like I said, I don't like to rely heavily on a PowerPoint, but because of the depth of this conversation, we're going to stay on the PowerPoint for most of the conversation, where we leave plenty of time to circle back and unpack it. Okay, so we ready to roll? Everybody, give me a snap your fingers if we're ready to roll.
Ready.
All right, let's go. So, Eli, can you give me co-hosting?
You should have it. Harold, can you?
Got it.
Can you
Yep, I got it.
Put that on. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so today we're talking about building your results-driven team. Okay, and have your pen ready. So why am I here? Why are we here today? And it's to focus on leadership and leadership development. And I love John Maxwell. I love his quotes. I love his books. But this is critically important in building any successful organization. When you lift the lid on your leadership ability through intentional learning, growing, you increase your impact as a leader. Okay. So here's just some quick attributes of leadership. We don't spend a lot of time here, but you know, you've got some of the key attributes of leadership are humility, the ability to communicate, innovation, honesty, integrity, a lot of character issues. It really boils down to a lot of character. You know, in our world, we don't hire the skill, we hire the person. We teach the skill. The person who the president, the previous president of Bryan Bryan and the current president of Bryan Bryan had no home inspection background. They were great leaders. We supported their lack of understanding the knowledge with our team, but I wanted leaders who could innovate, who were inspired, who could deal with healthy conflict. They had a great attitude. They were outward focused, not inward focused. So that's just a quick overview of the leadership criteria. So let me minimize this real quick. So the results triangle. Now, I told you to think of any organization. In this case, maybe think of the team, the real estate team you're a part of. And that's your grouping. And now the question you want to ask yourself, we don't have to answer this right now, but does your group consistently achieve high results? Or do you man, you push and you get big results and it kind of tapers off and it's just not a consistent flow. We've all experienced that where sometimes we execute at such a high level and other times it's man, it's just not clicking. What the heck is going on here? And again, the question you ask yourself, is it a team or a group? And each level of this results triangle is going to be a new measure to determine whether you're a group or a team, okay? So here's the rules. First rule of determining team versus group. As we're going through this triangle, we're going to start at the bottom, and if there's a breakdown at any level of this triangle, you cannot skip to the next level. You must, and this will become clear in just a few minutes, but if we start at a foundational point, if you can't say yes to this level, you cannot go to the next steps of getting results. You have to be willing to stop and park there. You can't jump, there's no shortcut to this. Okay, so here's your example, your team, your group, here's your triangle with your 4 horizontal lines. And at the bottom of your triangle, the first word you're gonna write is trust. Trust, man, that's a powerful word. It has a lot of connotation. So is there trust? So first off, think of your group of people and every individual in it. Just picture those people and ask yourself this question. Do we all have absolute trust with one another? Because if there is not absolute trust within your team, with every individual and corporately, you're not a team, you're a group of people. Which tells you that before we can do anything else, we're going to have to rest in establishing trust. And I will tell you, there have been times where there have been a break in trust with me and another person where it hasn't taken hours or days, it's taken months of intentional meeting to identify where was trust broken. Okay? So the need for trust is so powerful. Let's look at let's think about the attributes of trust. When you're with your team, can you be fully authentic in who you are? Can you be fully transparent and vulnerable? Can you bring ideas to the table without ridicule, without mock, without people rolling their eyes or shaking their heads? Do you roll your eyes or maybe shake your head or kind of internally oh, here we go again? Are you trustworthy? If somebody shares a deep issue in their life, do you hold that close to your heart? When you come into a meeting, do you feel like there's an environment where you can throw out the craziest idea in the world, something that's so far out there that people in your group, rather than saying, man, that's crazy, do they lead with, well, What are the possibilities? I'm going to sidebar here for just a second and give you a hack into how the highest achievers think. And I really want you to process this. I see this consistently. I'm in the room with entrepreneurs with net worths of 10 million to 250 million, and they all share the same attribute. Whenever they hear something that they don't understand or is something that they don't, with based on their own experience, may not really agree with, they never say no. Internally, there's never an internal voice that says, no, that won't work. They instinctively lead with, well, I don't really understand it, but I'm open to the possibility. Are you open to possibilities of other people that come to the table and share with you? If you were to sit down individually with each person in your group and say, you create a safe environment, I want to have a trust conversation. Do you consider me trustworthy? And be willing to listen. Because you may get some feedback that exposes a blind spot in your life. You may show up in a way that you're not intending to show up. You may have a certain feel that you're not intentionally putting out. I am very, very abrupt. And there has to be a lot of trust within my organization where people don't take my feedback personally. Because I bring it raw, I bring it strong, and I bring it with intentionality. And man, if somebody is wired in a way, or they lack self-confidence, or they don't know me that well, that can break trust very quickly. So do you create an environment to have trust conversation with your team? Sometimes we avoid those conversations because we know something is in there. There's a little burr under the saddle, and we don't want to expose that because, man, we might be called out. You might be going along really well for a long period of time, then all of a sudden you feel the shift in the room where something has caused a chill where people aren't being open with each other. Man, always have your antenna up for those moments where it's like, time out. There seems to be people are putting a lid on their conversation, and let's discuss this. Just be intentional about trust. Because if you can't say 100% that every person on my team trusts each other on the most basic level, then you are not a team. You're a group. And you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to everybody else to say, hey, you know what, this you are so important to me. I will do whatever is necessary to reestablish trust. I've had a situation where I had a key leader that I had 2 4-hour meetings, and it wasn't until about the 6th hour I realized this person was unwilling to reestablish trust. Trust was so broken from their perspective that they were not willing to even put in the effort to establish trust. I felt horrible that trust was broken. I put myself in a situation where I wanted to own anything that I did, intentionally or unintentionally, and I realized this person either lacked the emotional maturity or the willingness, or there was something inside that person. I realized at that moment, this was a high producer for me. I realized this relationship can no longer go on because this person will bring that lack of trust into our team, and it will destroy our team. So just give that a lot of thought, and your willingness to work towards that trust. Let's see. I think this is the right one. If I pull up some crazy, there we go. So if you have trust, go to your if you after we've established we have trust, or we work on trust, the next step in a results-driven team is conflict. Holy cow. So above trust, you're going to write conflict. Now, let's be honest. Conflict is something that is a really positive thing for a small minority of people and has a negative feel for a lot of people. If you grew up in an environment where conflict was really unhealthy, man, you may have to develop skills to have healthy conflict, or you may not even know what that looks like. If you grew up in an environment where solutions came through yelling or violence, conflict probably has a pretty, raw feel to it, that word conflict. But man, when you go into intentionally to a situation of conflict to set a goal, to set an agenda, to set a line item of action, and trust is there, man, you can have extraordinarily powerful conflict. Because here's what happens. No matter how intense it gets, if you've got powerful trust, you can like throw haymakers at each other because it's not personal. And when you both know, or the whole team knows, no matter how intense it gets in these conversations, it's not personal, that breaks down a lot of boundaries. It breaks down a lot of walls that prevents having healthy conflict. So some of the keys to healthy conflict is communication. Communication is the key to conflict resolution. When you're having conflict, the objective is you're pursuing a common goal. We have a common goal. Let's have conflict to get on the same page, right? It requires open and honest communication. Back to trust, right? We can't be honest if we don't have absolute trust. And I owe it to you to maintain trust, to be honest with you. And I'm willing for you to be honest with me, even if that requires you calling me out for my bullshit. Sometimes people will avoid conflict because of an unwillingness to take some body blows, or that we can no longer hide. We're going to be exposed in the areas we're not showing up. In reality, being called out for those things is one of the most rapid ways of personal and professional growth, is to allow other people into your space in conflict to have an honest dialogue with you. If you want to foster an environment of sharing differences, and we'll unplug that a little bit. Also, let's look at conflict from two sides. One without trust and one with trust. Now, without trust, it looks like this. We're going to have a meeting, and I don't trust you, and you don't really trust me. It may be a little bit of level of broken trust, or we just don't trust each other. Man, I just don't trust you. So, but we have to come to some sort of resolution on a project. Without trust, it looks like this. I'm coming in with my position, with my heels dug in. You come in with your position, with your heels dug in, and the only outcome is win and lose. I am not willing to come off of my position because I don't trust you, and I'm going to fight like hell for my position and nothing else. Now, with healthy conflict, it's beautiful, because now you can have not just one of two outcomes, but one of three potential outcomes: my way, your way, or something in the middle. You see, in healthy conflict, if you have your idea of the way something should go and I have my idea, I'm going to force you to knock me off of my position because I believe in my position, and I'm going to fight like crazy for my position. And I'm willing to come off of my position. That's the difference. I'm willing to move. I'm willing to hear your perspective. I may hear something that I didn't even consider before. Hey, there's a chance I'm not the smartest guy in the room. As a matter of fact, there's a good chance that everybody else sees something that I don't see. They see it more clearly and they see a better way of approaching solving this problem. I'm willing to let go of my ego. Ego is so dangerous in a conflict environment. Again, conflict with trust allows all parties to engage in robust disagreement. Now, this is so important without fear of judgment, reprisal, or condemnation. There is a willingness to listen, there is a desire to find consensus. And for those of you who have people on your team that answer to you, what if they come up and say some things that really, you know, put you in a position of kind of judging them of, hey, is this the right person? Have they shared something that could really be detrimental to their employment? You know what? I prefer having those conversations and not to go there, but to have an opportunity to work this person through those issues. But if I don't have a healthy conflict based on trust, they will never bring those things up. So I am stunting this person's growth because I haven't created a space where they can feel safe enough to be vulnerable, even if it may possibly cost them their job. You see, as a leader, I'm rarely concerned about the situation or a really bad decision. We intentionally create opportunities for our people to fail and to make decisions. But here's the beauty. Even if they fail, what I'm focusing on is how did they respond to that? What did they learn from this? We can pick up the pieces, we can fix what was broken, but we can't fix somebody who we haven't empowered to make decisions, even wrong decisions. In healthy conflict, we talk about the 3 ways. And this, once you have healthy conflict based on absolute trust, we go to the 3rd level of our results triangle. And before we do that, how many of you started with your grouping as a team? You started out, my group as a team. Okay? So everybody else just had a group? Wasn't a group? It's just, so how many of you listed your group as a team? Raise your hand. How many of you listed it as a group? Okay. Now, those of you who started out with team, if you run it through the filter of trust and healthy conflict, are you still a team? Excellent. Excellent. Because I'll get to the point where when I learned this, where my wheels fell off. Because it's like team, group. So so the next level on your thing, you've had trust breeds healthy conflict, and now we're going to gain commitment. That's the next word on your triangle. What does it mean to gain commitment? You see, how many times have you committed to something that wasn't your idea and you walk out grumbling about it or almost hoping it will fail because it wasn't your idea or the way you think it should be done? Think about that. Once you agree to commitment, even if it's the other side's way, what commitment means is I am fully committed to give everything I have, my heart, my attitude, my energy into making this work. I am committed to this goal and I'm committed to you. I'm not going to have this sidebar thing saying, yeah, well, I'm committed, but it ain't going to work. That's toxic. Even if you don't express those words, it's toxic for yourself. begin coaching yourself up, looking internally and asking yourself these questions. When we've decided as a group to go in this direction, are you willing to go all in and give it everything you have for that goal to win? Even if another person gets all the credit, all the platitudes, none of that matters who gets that. We know the adage, great leaders accept the blame and deflect the praise. And when you are on a team, you are a leader of yourself and you are a leader within that group. You have a leader's voice. And a leader buys into the commitment and supports that commitment. So we've got commitment. It's in our conflict is based on mutual trust. Commitment is achieved. Now, what this looks like is all parties agreed mutually to commit to an outcome that was born out of the conflict. So here's some attributes of a solid commitment. And this is really important. This is where typically when you're coming to a commitment, you want to write it down what it is. What have you committed to? You have an agreement of what are the expectations and the needs. Everybody is clear on that. And here's where we run into trouble in commitment is we make assumptions of what we are committed to. And we haven't taken the time to go out around the room for everybody to restate what the commitment is. And you can actually believe you're committed to something and hear something completely different and come back a week later. It's like, wait, hold on. I thought we were committed to this. That's why it's so important that there's an absolute agreement. And a lot of times it's powerful to put that agreement in writing and for everybody to sign off on it. There are clear expectations, not only the goal, but what is your responsibility to achieve that goal? What is your role in this? What duties have you taken onto yourself because the team is relying on you to perform your piece of it? There's an agreement on what are the needed resources, financial resources, capital resources, human resources. You're all in agreement what that looks like. The lost opportunity cost. Hey, we're in agreement to this, but by the way, if I'm applying 5 hours a week to this, remember, I'm not going to have 5 hours a week to work on this other thing, but we are committed that, hey, that's where I'm going to commit my time to. And we all have an understanding of the lost opportunity cost of if I'm working on this, what I can't be working on. Okay, that makes sense? And finally, it's fully definable by every team member. And this is where once you gain commitment on what the goal is, you go around the room and everybody restates exactly what the goal is, what the resources are, what the time is needed, and what they are committed to do themselves. So there's no space for misunderstanding. There's no space for misaligned expectations. And finally, this is what you want to avoid, is bobblehead syndrome. What is bobblehead syndrome? I think we've all experienced this. How many of you have sat in a room, you got 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 people, you rolled out this plan, everybody agrees, everybody's bobblehead, and yep, I agreed. The second they go out the door, they turn to somebody and said, this is bullshit. This isn't going to work. I don't know why we're even doing this. This makes no sense at all. I mentioned before that I will identify toxicity, and that is a toxic approach. And I don't care if you're the president of my company. If we identify toxicity, you will be gone before the day is over. I will not allow somebody to poison the culture of our company. And when somebody walks out the door and they start murmuring, that's a sign that they are toxic. But here's how you have power. Here's some absolute power that you have. Think about if you walk up to a group of people, 3 or 4 people, and they're gossiping. They're gossiping about Bob. Bob's such an asshole. Bob, he just gets on my nerves, Bob this, Bob that. But you're a professional. You have a standard for yourself. And you walk up and you listen to everybody piling on to Bob. And you say, you know what? I hear what y'all are saying, but my experience with Bob has been pretty positive. I see this quality in Bob, this quality, this quality. Have you ever been in an environment like that where somebody comes in with a direct opposite approach and it turns the whole dynamic of the conversation instantly? Instantly, people say, yeah, come to think of it, yeah, Bob does kind of do this. It kind of does this. He really does show up here. You see, in any team, we like to say this is our standards. But when we accept gossiping, murmuring, and don't address it, that's really our standard. We can say what our standard is all day long, but if every time we accept something below that standard, that's our standard. And we have to stop pretending that we have these highfalutin words of culture, and we operate off of MVVC, mission, vision, value, culture statement. We live by it. But do we really? Do we allow people to go against our MVVC and accept it? Because every time we accept that, we are accepting a lower standard for our team and for ourselves. We owe it, because you will learn as you build a high results driven team, you will attract high performance talent. Talent begets talent. Excellence begets excellence. People want to be people who want to build a bigger life, a better life. They want to be surrounded by talent and standards. And they may not say anything stuff, but inside, man, it's really not that way. So be thinking about that with your team. Do you ever run across a situation of bobblehead syndrome? So let's go to the part where my wheels fell off, right on the next line of your results pyramid. Write the word accountability. This is the level where most seemingly healthy teams fail. Where I typically see teams fail is in accountability or trust. Now let's get real. Accountability requires absolute agreed upon commitment. Accountability is a double-edged sword. To hold others accountable, now listen to this, and I'm as guilty as anybody on this call, times 10. To hold others accountable, the highest performing leaders are held accountable to their teams and to themselves. Listen, I grew up poor. I had to go to work on a forged birth certificate when I was 14. I had to work full time from my sophomore year in high school, 40 hours a week or more to help feed the family. Right? And one of the reasons we're in business is to create great leaders, to create opportunities for themselves, so that people who work in my business are can provide in a way that their children won't have to experience what I experienced growing up. But in that, I also damaged myself very badly. I determined at a very young age, I will never be in a position of being responsible to another person or to be held accountable by anybody. I'm an island. And so when we went through this exercise, it was team, accountability, group, because I would not put myself in an environment to be held accountable. Man, it's easy to hold somebody else accountable. It's very difficult to allow yourself to be held accountable. And if you think, well, I'm self-accountable. No, sorry, it doesn't work that way. You have to put other people, especially your team, in a position like, listen, if I've got a role in this results and I'm participating in this, that I'm going to be called out just like everybody else in this room for not showing up. And I'm going to accept my beating. It's not a beating, but I'm going to accept what I've earned, which would be called out to do better. If you can go through and this results triangle, and you understand these things in your DNA, not just in your head, but in your DNA. Here's how you know it's in your DNA. We're on a team. We're moving towards a result. We're not getting a result. You can instantly you think, where is the breakdown here? Is it breakdown in accountability? Is it commitment? Is it in conflict? Or is it in trust? Wherever the breakdown is, you go there and you park there until you fix it. Because until you fix that, you cannot move towards a result in any other area of your business, not consistently. So we're going to quickly take about just 2 or 3 minutes because I want to open up for a conversation. And I'm going to just go through a few slides here that are just some things that deal with accountability. Many times we fail in holding others accountable because we don't want to be held accountable. We discussed that. So here's accountability types. There's 3 types. A weak accountability team is there's no accountability. we call ourselves a team, but there's no mechanism to hold one another accountable. We just show up, and if you read the books 4 Disciplines of Execution, we live off the lag measures. What do the results show us? And we just hope next time we meet, we have better results. There's no accountability around achieving better results. We're just hoping. That's a very weak team. Not as weak, but still pretty weak. And we see this in mediocre teams, is the boss is the source of accountability. If you want a high performance team, a high performance organization, the peers manage the vast majority of performance problems amongst each other. There's an open and honest willingness to be held accountable. So again, trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. But I do want to go to a question. Say you have a high performance team. You're hitting on all cylinders, and now you add a new member to your team. Let me ask you this. You got a great team, you add a new member. Are you still a team, or are you now a group?
I'd say we go back to group.
Yeah, why is that, Eli?
Because that person's still not part of the culture. It's not, you still don't know if you trust them, how they handle conflict,
Yeah,
how committed they are, and the accountability piece.
yeah. The team doesn't know them well enough to know if they can be trusted. That new person doesn't know if you are trustworthy. It takes time. And so with an understanding about that, the beauty in this is every time you add a new team member, you realize, okay, we have to run like gazelles towards establishing trust within our group to get back on track of high performance results. This may even be a great person who already works in the organization, but not within that team. So it will accelerate the trust building factor, right? But it still doesn't exist. And don't assume it does. Don't make that assumption just because, yeah, they already know the culture. We know them. We like them. They know us. They like us. No, let's have trust conversations. Let's create that environment. What do we need to know about you? How do we break trust with you? How you break trust with us? What does that look like? So they know what the expectations are. They know, listen, man, if you lie, if you deflect, if you blame others, that's the fastest way to lose trust in this group. But if you're honest, you're transparent, you take ownership, you're willing to, fall on the sword if it's yours to fall on, man, that goes a long way in maintaining trust within our group. And finally, I'm not going to go back to PowerPoint. I want you to write down, there's when you have an accountability conversation, it's very short. People ask me all the time if I'll be an accountability partner. But if I say yes, I lay out very, very, very strict ground rules. Because an accountability conversation typically shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. And here's what it looks like. If I'm holding you accountable to something, we're not talking about anything else except what you're being held accountable to. If you call me, we're not talking about the weather, the dogs, the family, other areas of business, the stress you're under, what the weather is like. I don't care. You know, I may care, but not in this setting. We are here for an accountability conversation. And there's only 4 questions that you ask every single time. First question, what was the goal? That person restates the goal to you. Even if it's the same goal every single week, they say, this is the goal. Okay, good. Now we're on the same page of what the goal is. Second question, how did you do? They either hit the goal or they didn't. If they didn't hit the goal, if they hit the goal, conversation's over. Great job. What's your goal for next week? Call's over. If they didn't hit the goal, it leads to the third question. What got in the way? And this is a beautiful question. And it requires active listening. Because many times people will think a legitimate reason for not hitting your goal is actually an excuse, but they don't recognize it as an excuse. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say, I'm just grabbing something out of my head. Say my job is to power call from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock every day and to set 3 appointments. An hour a day, 3 appointments. That's my goal. So if it's 3 appointments a day, at the end of the week, I'm to set 15 appointments. I meet you on Monday. What was the goal? Smile and dial for an hour, set 15 appointments. How did you do? I set 13 appointments. So you hit the goal. What got in the way? Well, on Tuesday and Thursday, a couple people knocked on the door. They had a real critical issue they had to deal with. I got this text that I had to respond to immediately, and I had to answer this email, and I had to go to the bathroom. Okay, those sound legitimate, but they're actually excuses. Okay, so here's what I'm hearing, Eli. You didn't hit your goal, and people are knocking your door, so it sounds like you haven't conditioned the environment around you that between 9 and 10, you are not accessible for any reason whatsoever. That's on you, not on them. They will take whatever time you give them. If you say 9 to 10 is non-negotiable and they're still knocking on the door, you have not created the environment where everybody understands. The only time you knock on my door between 9 and 10 is if the building is literally burning down. I don't care if it's a complaint from a client. I don't care if it's this. This is the most important thing in my life from 9 to 10 because I've committed to this. It's something different if I hadn't committed, but I've made a commitment that other people are relying on my performance and nothing will get in the way. I should have checked my emails before I went in. I should have turned off my phone or put it on airplane mode. I should go to the bathroom and hydrate and all that before I go into that because I know that, hey, that's gotten in the past. It's gotten in the way before where I had to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go to the bathroom before I start dialing because I'm going to condition myself that this hour is the most important hour of my day because in a high results driven team, I've committed to my team to perform this. That makes sense? So we've got about 8 minutes. And I want to read a few comments. Eli, this is a hard internal dialogue to have. Healthy conflict, my way, your way, or something in the middle. Yep, fighting for your position, being willing to hear others' perspectives, letting go of ego. Resentment is a killer of relationships and business. Man, it is. You know, and I'm one to harbor bitterness. And I've had to make decisions to not just the people I'm bitter with. If there's no bridge to restoration, I have to cut them out of my life completely. If it's family, you got to work through that, right? But I'm not going to let them influence me.
Yeah.
Build your bunker. What does that mean, Eli? Build your bunker.
So that's what so key takeaways. I'm gonna give you guys my 3 takeaways from this conversation because I think it was a really, really important conversation. Number one, and I'm gonna get to build the bunker in a minute. Number one, which is blows my mind because I never thought about it this way, is be clear about the commitment. And to me, usually that means what are we committed to, and it's always a goal, right? That we want to make this much, we want to sell this many houses. But as you were walking through it, it's like there's so much more to this, right? It's being clear about the goals, it's being clear about the tools that we're using, it's being clear about how we're treating people, it's being clear about who our client avatar is, it's being clear about who we allow on our team, it's being clear about how we work, it's being clear about our culture. I think it's a whole clarity, the commitment to everything, to the tools, to the people, to the whatever. So that was a big for me. Number two, which is something I got from Ben Kinney, is do not allow resentment. As you were going through the pyramid between trust, conflict, and commitment, there's so much space there to build resentment, and resentment kills relationships. I mean, that is the one. If you're on my team, Marcos has heard me say this before. Misty, who was on our team, has heard me this before. Kayla's not here, but my biggest thing is I do not allow resentment in my life.
Yeah.
So the minute you feel like I did something wrong, the minute I didn't show up for you, you got to talk to me because it's gonna build and it's gonna explode. And then my last one, which was build your bunker, is like you're saying. I was actually talking to a coach this morning. It's almost like you were there while I was talking to him. And I'm not reaching some of the things I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not doing. He's like, "What is it?" It's distractions. It's my kids knocking on the door, my wife knocking on the door, and I'm not building my bunker. And I'll give everybody a really good example. There is an agent in Austin, Texas. I forgot his name, of course. I had it on top of my head. And the way he built his bunker is he goes in his office, he's got water bottles, he's got a fridge of water bottles, he's got snacks. And one day, to start training himself, he did something. I'm not telling you to do this, but he did it really big. He was a Keller Williams agent, Keller Williams office. He had his own little office. He called his assistant over to his office and said, "I'm sitting behind the desk. Do not come in. Just open the door on the stool in front of the door. My pants are there. Take my pants with you. They're in a bag. Take my pants." And what he was doing is building the bunker to a point where I cannot leave this place. Do not give me my pants till 11 o'clock. From 9 to 11, I lead generate. I can't leave in my underwear. So take my pants and do not bring them back until 11 o'clock, no matter what I tell you. Unless there's a fire in the building, which I'm still going to run out with my underwear, do not bring my pants back. And it was that. He was building his bunker. It's his bunker. You can't knock on the door. There's a sign in the front. Do not knock. Do not come in. And it's so important. It's something that I've always been lacking on. So that's build your bunker. I guess that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I saw a few smiles that take his pants away, but man, that's commitment. That's like, listen, he recognizes that I have to remove these. He was intentional about saying, hey, I've got to remove excuses. I've got to remove distractions, and I'm not going to think about it. What action am I going to take to build my bunker? Here's a quick little resource for y'all to have as a team. And this is from Recruit Select, RSTMM, and we're actually certified RSTMM for, we're the only people that can coach it in the inspector space. And I love having an expectation dialogue. We won't go through the whole thing, but here's a great exercise to have with your people. Just one question. I'll just one question of it. How do you win and how do you lose with me? And how do I win and how do I lose with you? An example of that is, here's how you lose with me. Come to me with a problem without 3 solutions. Anybody can identify problems. A leader comes with solutions, even if they're not right solutions, they're not well thought out. I want to ensure that you're thinking, and you're not just looking, you're not a baby bird wanting me to feed you with answers. I want to create an environment where you're thinking through, okay, I'm going to be asking this question. And I know, if nothing else, it's gonna rub Greg the wrong way if I come in with, hey, we got this problem, and like, but we're gonna start with what you believe the solutions are, and we're gonna unpack that. Good stuff, Eli. Any other takeaways from today's conversation that anybody would like to share?
I have a takeaway. My takeaway, so it's myself, and excuse me, I don't have the camera on, but I'm sick today, but I'm on the call. So anyway, my takeaway is I have a small team. It's myself, a TC, and then a new agent. And the accountability piece, which Eli knows I've always kind of struggled with this, but the accountability piece, but realizing that I don't always hold other people accountable because of because of being not wanting to be held accountable all the time by myself. So that was like a big aha moment for me. I was like, oh gosh, yikes, that's scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is scary.
Misty's so raw and genuine. I love it. So vulnerable.
So
Yeah, but boy, that's powerful, Misty, because that's very universal. And I'm gonna encourage you to step back and not necessarily today, but take some time over the next week to think, okay, why is it I don't want to be held accountable? Is it because I don't want to get boxed in? I don't want to be restricted. I feel like I'll look like I'm falling short in the eyes of my peers. There could be a number of reasons for it, but that intentionality of personally drilling in, asking yourself those powerful questions. Why do I show up this way? Great stuff. Thank you, Misty.
Thank you.
Anybody else? And I want to
So
challenge for those, if any of you have a question, go ahead, Caleb.
yeah, I do have a question, Mr. Greg. So, in my scenario, my team, I have 4 other agents, and they're my brothers and my brother-in-law. We're a young group of guys, a highly producing team in the area, and it's starting to come across our table that we're thinking about expanding and getting bigger and adding newer agents on. The one concern that I have is, we're very close knit. So, like you said, and you pointed it out, and I was going to have a question about it. When adding a new person, you're no longer a team, you're a group because you need to establish all of those levels again. With a scenario like us where we're so close knit and bringing in strangers, like what are some ways that I could help foster an environment to just establish trust as a whole?
Great question. I think it would start with you and your brothers. What is it? Because you may think some things are just obvious, but they may not be. And I would go around the room and each of you share why is it we have trust with each other? That's an important
100%.
question because you all may have a very different take on it, or at least a different flavor of why we have trust. And then start documenting what are our expectations of a trustworthy person.
Awesome.
And once you identify that, now you're starting to build a system. Now you're starting to systematize your business. Now it's like, okay, now we've gone through this exercise of listing out. Now we have this little folder of trust, our trust folder. So when we meet, when we bring somebody into our team, say, hey, here's what we're looking for. We're gonna have a trust meeting. And we want to share what our idea of trust is, and we want to know what your idea of trust is. So now everybody has clear expectations, but you're starting to recognize why is it we click on all cylinders as brothers? Because it can be replicated, but there's some things that are so natural you don't know how you got there because you spent time together, right? That's a great question, Caleb.
Hey, thank you, Greg.
Yep.
Hey Greg, this is Veronica.
Hey, Veronica.
So one thing that I had a question on, and I've had my group, I say my group because I have weird team in there, but obviously there's some things that at one point or another we may have been a team, but it's always looked different. I've had one person on my team, I've had 5 people on my team. One thing that I feel like I keep coming across is the third tier of the triangle is commitment. So for me, I'm a high producer. I'm an operator, so I will go through fire to get things done. And I think that that's been a challenge for me in my business because I've had to learn how to communicate with people of other styles. But as far as the overall commitment to the common goal, it usually kind of tapers off around what I'm seeing is like month 3 and 4. It's like it's too much work. A lot of the agents that I have added to my team in the past have been part-time agents, meaning like they have a job and they're doing this kind of part-time. So I don't know if that plays into it as well. But so that's my question is like, how do I get, or we get all on the same page about what we're committed to?
I think there's a few things to unpack there. One is behavior. For those of you who are familiar with behavioral assessments, there's the AVA. There's some people use the DISC, which is more of a personality assessment that bleeds into behavior. But understanding how people communicate, I'll give you a quick example. When my wife took her behavioral thing, it was funny. I realized, wow, the way you communicate, you're not trying to do that to me. And here's what that is. My behavior is I'm a bottom line guy. I'm not interested in any details. I'm not interested in how the dots are connected. I'm just like, we're here, get here. And I don't give a shit, excuse my language, how we get there, just get there. My wife is a process person. She's like, well, Greg, that's great, but there's like 1,000 dots of connection to make that happen. But here's how it shows up in communication. If she knows that I'm a bottom line person and comes into my space, she's going to communicate with a bottom line interaction. Here's what the starting point was. This is where we're at. This is what we need to do. Okay, thanks. Meeting's over. With her, she can say, hey, Greg, how's your day? It was fine. I did this and this. It was a good day. With her, I'll say, hey, Theresa, how was your day? Well, I got up in the morning, had a cup of coffee, then I went down to the co-op and had a good, I ran into Jill and we visited a little bit. Then I went over and had lunch here. And I'm thinking, oh my God, will you just please, for God's sake, just answer the question. Just please, for all that's good in my life, just please answer the question. Then I realized, you know what? She has to go through the process to answer the question. So it starts with understanding how people communicate. Also, do they receive information audibly, visually? There's like 7 different ways in which we learn. And today is too short, but find resources on how to understand how people communicate. And then when it comes to setting commitments, and if there seems to be a breakdown, you park there, and that's where accountability comes in. And say, okay, the goal was this. We're falling short. Let's park here in a trusting, safe environment, and let's walk through why. Because you may hear, listen, this is not as much work as I expected. I can't commit this much time, this much effort. It's like, okay, that may be okay. It may not be okay, depending on what your expectation is, but it may be okay. How do we fix that? Do we need to give you more time? Or when you make this commitment, do we need to account for that you are only available or only have the energy to do this, and we will adjust our expectations based on your energy level? It may be seasonally. It may be issues in the family. There could be so many other things, but it just requires ongoing, honest dialogue. But it starts with accountability, because you really don't know. You really can't take measure unless you have consistent accountability. And we have accountability on our KPIs on a daily and weekly basis. Everybody knows exactly what they're expected to do. And here's what happens. Here's the beauty in this. If somebody, you rarely have to terminate somebody. I hate to even use that lingo, but if you have high accountability and somebody's not performing, and they know they're going to have an accountability conversation every Monday, every Wednesday, or every Friday, whatever it is, and they are underperforming, they are either going to kick it into gear, or they're going to dread having that accountability conversation. And if you're consistent in those accountability conversations, they will either rise up or self-exit.
So that's what I've seen. I've seen a lot of self-exit. I haven't told anybody to leave my team. Well, one for fraud, but outside of that, everybody else, it's been a self-exit. And I'm typically seeing it between month 3 and 5 when I'm having these weekly accountability calls or breakdowns, if you will. So.
And I would be very intentional about, if you've got a pattern of that, there may be a common thread on your end. It may not be, but it may be something that you have to do some self-inventory It's like, okay, am I not picking up on signals? Have I created an environment where they feel, we go back to trust, they feel like they can trust and come to me and say, listen, I know I committed to this. I'm giving it all I can in this area, but there is no more that I can give. At that point, you can make a determination, well, that I can make that work, or you know what, my needs exceed that. And a lot of times, man, it's if you've got talent, but they have restrictions for whatever reason, sometimes you just work within those confines. But at the very least, you both have expectations. Now you've reset what the expectation is and what the accountability measure is, but you're aligned in that. And that gives them space to say, hey, because maybe they're getting burned out and they don't, rather than disappointing you, because they believe in what you're doing, they believe, and maybe because they just want to, they'll just self-exit. It's like, hey man, man, I hate for you just to wait till you're at your tipping point and then you just exit. You have to be intentional about staying way ahead of that, looking for those signs of, and that's where the accountability, I'm starting to see a little bit of drop off. Let's unpack this. Man, I cannot do this much in this time frame consistently every week. It's like, okay, well, let's determine what you can do and why. And then make the determination if it's still a fit.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Veronica, do you have your team on like a really established, well done 30, 60, 90?
When I had team members besides my TC, I just have that new team member, but she's on duty right now. So I want to start things off the right way.
Yeah, so 30, 60, 90 will be the saving grace. That's my mistake, has always been not putting people on 30, 60, 90. I think that's
Yeah.
the big one. But the 30, 60, 90 is always just expectations. People are there on a day-to-day basis. You're reviewed basically daily, but then you have a 30-day that conversation, which Greg, this is awesome, man. This is
Yeah.
really good stuff. Really good stuff. I mean, I think the hardest part is that as a leadership is accountability. It's not only on yourself, but what does that look like? How do you set up the expectations up front? And I know that's a completely different conversation, different meeting as well, but this was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Eli. Before we go, I want to throw one thing out. This is outside of your own team. And this is very, very personal to me. We do a lot of inspections. We'll do over 10,000 inspections this year. Okay. And we have a lot of friends and we have some, people who don't like us that much. It comes with the turf. We get that. Here's what as a professional, what I really dislike is if you're building your own team of your support team of a mortgage company, an inspector, about if the inspector does something or says something or does something that causes problem with the transaction, if you look at through a team, this results driven team, you may have a relationship with somebody that don't just throw that relationship away because they did something that pissed you off. Or maybe they did something that maybe they made a mistake. They made it, whatever it is, you owe it to yourself as a professional because you would want the same thing. If you did something that rubbed somebody, how good would you feel if somebody came to you and said, hey man, you did this and I want to talk about it. Your team did this. Your inspector, you did this. Your buyer's agent did this. Your coordinator did this. Whatever it is, because unless you give that person the feedback, they can't learn and they can't adjust. And you'll end up having this support team that you're just recycling. And just avoid that because you want to build relationships where you can go to that part of your team. The mortgage company's like, listen, man, you promised this, you didn't show up. The inspector wrote this kind of thing on here. It's bullshit why they wrote this. You killed this whole deal, whatever it may be. Listen, give us the opportunity to either explain why, give you context, or own up to it. And that's not just for a relationship with us, but with any inspector, any mortgage company, any home warranty company, whatever this team you have, extend these team building concepts to your outer layer teams. That will help in your growth, and that goes to conflict. It will hone your conflict skills. Because it's easier just to crap on somebody and walk away than it is to confront them and say, hey, listen, we've got an issue. I started this call with the respect I had with Eli, because it was some deal. It was some little deal. It wasn't much, but he came directly to me. Hey, Greg, I have this little issue. It's like, man, this is a professional right here. We can fix that. But if I don't know about it, we can't fix it.
And you did. You guys showed up, walked into that attic and fixed it.
Yep, and fixed it.
I remember that. That was years ago, man. I can't believe you remember that. That was many years ago.
It
I was
was.
at the beginning of my career, I think. I was like maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah,
But I
right.
appreciate that, man. Greg, thank you so much. Hey, Greg, how can people contact you if you want to put that in the chat? How to get a hold of you if you're okay with that, email, social media, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I'll put that in here right now. It's Greg at Inspector Team.
Guys, if you got any kind of value out of this, thumbs up, fire emojis. Thank you, Greg. Something in the comments so we can see some activity. Show
Yeah.
them some love. This is really, really good. We appreciate you. Can we
If you
copy?
post anything on Facebook, just tag Greg Bryan or tag Bryan and Bryan Inspections. Megan, I think it's Bryan and Bryan Inspections, right?
I never know. It's either
Yes.
team or Brian and Brian.
We're Bryan and Bryan Inspections on Facebook and at the Inspector Team on Instagram.
At the Inspector Team on Instagram.
Yeah, I think at some point you sent a survey out to your clients asking what
Yes,
name
we
you
did.
prefer. I remember that years ago too. And I'm like,
We were trying to change names, and that didn't work.
Brian and Brian. That's the name.
All right, everybody, listen, love your team, love your family, most importantly, love yourself, and let's all have a great week. All right. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Greg.
much for giving your
Appreciate it.
time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
That was so good.